Hey everyone, it's great to see you all. If a few more people trickle in, they will join us soon, but I think it's a great time to get started. We have an excellent guest with us tonight, and I think we're going to have a really great discussion about some very important topics related to Israel. I will let Lily, in fact, properly introduce her, and then Ophir will have a chance to share more about herself and lead us into our talk. But I think it's only natural, given the connection between Lily and Ophir, that Lily give the first introduction.
All right, so just to introduce Ophir דיין was born and raised in Ma'ale Shomron in Israel. She served as an officer in field positions in the IDF spokesperson unit for 3.5 years and received an award for her work during Operation Protective Edge. She studied political science as an undergraduate at Columbia University and was president of Columbia Students Supporting Israel. She's a frequent contributor and interviewee in many newspapers, radio stations, TV shows, and other websites. And she now studies at Columbia's Graduate School of Public Affairs. So we're really excited to have Ophir speak. She was my president of SSI when I was an undergraduate. And yeah, I'm really excited to hear from her. I'll hand things over to you, Ophir.
Thank you, Lily, and it's really nice to see you again. It's been a while. I assume for all of you, it's been a while with COVID and everything. So that was a really nice introduction. Thank you. I will introduce myself. I'm sorry if it's going to be a bit long. The reason that I want to introduce myself in this way is because I really want this to be a conversation. I don't want it to be just a lecture. So I'm going to take 2 minutes to introduce myself. Then I'm going to touch on one topic that is really important to me, which is the Temple Mount. And then you can feel free to ask me whatever you want on the Temple Mount, on other things. And, you know, the reason that I want to tell you about myself is that so you know what my experience in life is, so you can ask whatever is relevant or whatever you think is relevant and I didn't mention. So hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Ophir. I'm 27. As Lily said, I was born and raised in a very small community in the Samaria called Ma'ale Shomron. It's a mixed community, which means that it's religious and secular Jews living together, which is a very interesting interaction. And I grew up there. I honestly have to say that it was pretty homogenic in terms of ideology. So growing up, I did not hear many opposing opinions. I was raised in a youth movement called Beit. It's a Zionist youth movement. If you ever heard of this guy, Jabotinsky. So he was the founder of Beit, and that's my spiritual guide in life. So I was an instructor there, head of branch, and then I went on to do a year of volunteering before the army in my youth movement, and then I drafted to the IDF. I served 3.5 years in field positions in the spokesperson unit. So as a soldier, I was the spokesperson of the 188th Brigade, which is in the Armored Corps. I was there during Operation Protective Edge. Would love to speak about that as well, and how you, I don't know how to say that nicely, do PR for war, and what you say or don't say during a war, and the challenges that entails. If that's of interest to any of you, I know that this is something that is very similar to my experience on campus during altercations between Israel and Hamas and Israel and Hezbollah. I found this work to be quite similar to what I did in the IDF. And then I went to officers course, and I was a spokesperson of the 80th Division, which is a division in the south of Israel. It's the biggest division in the IDF, and it controls both borders with Jordan and with Egypt. So on the one hand, you know, the Islamic State in the Sinai Peninsula, which was then the strongest ISIS stronghold in the Middle East. It was a little after things started falling apart for them in Iraq, in Syria. On the other hand, these are two borders with countries that we have disagreements with. So that's a completely different challenge. and then I decided to come to Colombia in a sharp change of events. The reason I decided to come to Colombia, I'll be honest with you, I never wanted to live in the States. That was never my desire. I love Israel and I'm going to live there my entire life. The reason I wanted to come to Colombia is because when I was a soldier during Operation Protective Edge, I worked with one international correspondent. And as a part of my job, I arranged for him to go into Gaza with my commander, my brigade commander. And I told the reporter, like inside Gaza, you're not going to be able to interview him since, it's a war zone. So if you have any questions, you should ask them now. I'm going to spare you to guess what was the question. I'm just going to tell you that the question was, do you have kids? And at first I was really confused. I was like, why do you care if he has kids? And my commander says, yes, I have 3 little children. And the reporter, who has been living in Israel for a while, a few years, he is representing a very big media outlet here in the States, says, and how do you feel about killing kids the age of your kids in just a little while? And for me, I think that was the moment I understood how biased the international media is against Israel. And if that is the case, how biased are the people here against Israel? Because that's what they hear. And they look at this person, this international correspondent, as someone who is, proficient, who's someone who is an expert in Israel. And this is what he tells them. He doesn't tell them that Hamas are targeting civilians. He doesn't tell them that the kids that are actually being killed are those who have bombs underneath their kindergartens in Gaza. He doesn't tell them that. I don't want to be bragging and saying that, at that moment I understood that I need to fight Israel, to fight on college campuses. That's not true. I still wanted to stay in Israel. But when I thought about college, I started reading about what's going on college campuses in the US and being in the spokesperson unit for so long. My dad was here working in New York at the time, and they said, you know what, that's a challenge I want to take part in. And I came here. I studied at Columbia. I'm like a dinosaur. I'm a 5th year at Columbia. It's like the alma mater, and it's the only one who has been at Columbia for longer than I have. 5 years. And for the first 4 years, for my undergraduate, I was very involved with Students Supporting Israel. I was also the president. And I'm going to end this introduction by talking a bit about SSI, because this is something that is very important to me. Lily, if there's anything you want to add about the organization, feel free. The reason and I know it's a weird term to use, fell in love with SSI, and that's what it is. It became a huge part of my college experience and my life. There are several reasons. First of all, and that might seem counterintuitive, it's not a Jewish organization. We have Jews and non-Jews work together. Which I think is super important, because if Zionism is right and if Zionism is moral, we can't only have Jews advocating for it. And again, I'm sure you heard that line of argument before, but I truly believe in it, that Zionism managed to liberate the Jewish people, and we have a moral obligation to help others achieve the same end. So that's one facet of it. But the other one is that even more counterintuitive for me, that it's not a partisan organization. For my entire life, I was very involved in politics in Israel. I have a weekly column in Israel's biggest newspaper now. I'm a very political individual. But the fact that on campus, the question is not 67, the question is 48, and whether or not Israel has a right to exist. I truly believe that we don't have the privilege to be divided into different camps, and left and right, and liberals and progressives and whatnot, and conservatives and whatnot. I really love the fact that we were all able to come together, say we believe in the right of the Jewish people to self-determination in their homeland, and we are working together to make sure that is clear to everyone on this campus, which is sad. I wish that was clear. It should have been clear, but it's not. And that's why I love SSI. With SSI, we take a more activist approach. It's not that other organizations don't do things, they do. just the way that we did things is different. So for example, during Apartheid Week, we would have our own Hebrew Liberation Week, have our own display. We were more out there in terms of Israel activism, which is something that is really important for me personally, and also the messaging that we discussed. We talked about indigeneity, we talked about Jewish rights, we talked about the connection between Jews and the land of Israel, which is something that unfortunately I don't see many other traditional, like Hasbara organization doing, not Hasbara organization, like generally is a term. That's about that. I'm gonna briefly speak about the Temple Mount, and then we're gonna open it up for discussion. It's not a Q&A, it's a discussion. So whatever you want to talk about, feel free. The Temple Mount. So I will start by saying that 4 years ago, I joined an incredible organization called Students for the Temple Mount. It was my freshman year of college. Obviously, this organization is based in Israel, but it's now international because I'm here. But it's an incredible organization like SSI. It's not one-dimensional. We have secular and religious Jews who believe in the right of the Jewish people to the Temple Mount. That does not mean that we want to build the third temple tomorrow morning. It does not mean, we are all religious. I'm not. It purely means that it's a group of people who look to this current situation where Jews cannot pray on the Temple Mount. I was removed forcibly from the Temple Mount and was not able to go on to the Temple Mount for more than a month for singing Israel's national anthem on the Temple Mount. And this is a reality that people like me and people in my organization were unwilling to accept. So I became really invested in this organization. I've been working with them for the past 4 years. Obviously, like it's a volunteering thing, it's just an organization that I'm active with. And in a lot of ways, it's very similar to SSI. And what we do, we're also like very active activists in terms of the way we approach things. And we work on several dimensions. We have public relations, we have press, we meet a lot with Israeli Knesset members and ministers, etc. I just heard today back that we managed, this is something I worked on for a very long time, to get a special discussion in the Committee on Education in the Israeli Knesset to talk about the lack of mentioning of the Temple Mount in the Israeli educational system, which is something I worked on for a very long time. And today they gave us a date for the committee, so I'm really happy about that. So that's about that. And last thing, it's not very unique to Israel, so I'm not going to talk about it for a very long time. But if you have questions about that, you're more than welcome. I'm also a part of an organization called Comeback, which helps formerly incarcerated people go back into society through employment. This is not unique to Israel. There are many organizations like that in the US as well, but this is something that I also very much care about. So if you have other questions about NGOs in Israel and stuff like that, also feel free. Yeah, and I would gladly open it for discussion. If anyone has a comment, a question on that. Jonathan and I yesterday discussed a few points. So just to throw it out there to give you ideas, either of the, all of the things that I talked about thus far, but also if you're interested in what happened during Guardians of the Walls, if you're interested in the riots in the mixed cities, I know this is in Sheikh Jarrah. These are things that I know that are very prominent in the debate about Israel nowadays. So feel free to ask whatever you want.
Definitely. Thank you, Ophir. Obviously, there's a lot to unpack and a lot to